Hi everyone, I'm here again with my next video on tennis related items. Today I'm going to be talking about printing blocks, and these are what they are, just metal designs on wooden blocks. And these are used for printing adverts and such likes in magazines and newspapers. So hopefully today's subject will be of interest to you. Block printing originated in China in 220 BC. I'm not going to give you a history lesson on it, but basically they started using blocks, carved blocks of wood, and they were pressed onto fabric. The blocks of wood were covered in ink, and they were pressed onto fabric to put designs on fabric for them making clothing with material. And then in the 1400s, Johannes Gutenberg, which you'll probably hear of from the Gutenberg Bible, he had a printing press, and he was institutional in having metal printing blocks created. So what he would do, he would carve into a block of metal a letter in his case, but the letter would be in reverse, because when you push the block down into the material, it was a reverse image that you would get. And so they had to carve the letter in a reverse order so that when it printed, it was correct to be read. This would then be placed into a letterpress machine, and you would have a group of letters making sentences and words and phrases and such likes, and then they were pressed onto paper to produce a page of text. The letters were placed in two different cases for the person to use, and so there was a case that was high up and a case that was here, and the top case would have the capital letters that were produced, and the bottom case would have the small letters that were produced. And apparently this is where we get uppercase letters and lowercase letters, which we call today. Pictorial or graphic blocks were carved the same way as a letter, but they were carved to produce a picture like this. And so the parts that you didn't want to print on the paper were carved out of the metal, and the pieces that were left at the top were what was produced, the graphic in the on the paper. And these were then ready to be used in the printing press. You can see by this block here that the carving is very detailed, and in those days it would have been extremely hard to have done that by hand. It's not the same today, it's a different system today, but the detail that they would have had to have carved in the 1400s would have been had to have been done in reverse, similar to the letters. So depending on what way, for example, this block, you can see he's facing to the left, but when you print it, it'll actually be facing to the right. And this is what it will look like. Metal blocks, such as the ones I'm going to show you today, were originally made from metals like zinc, copper, or brass, and that was to withstand long print runs and frequent use, so they would last longer on those metals. The ones I've got are a lead, by the looks of things, which was another material they did use. And these were not made by cutting out by hand, because they're too detailed for that. The method that they use now is a digital to plate technology, and it's high-powered fiber lasers, and they are cut into the metal. So they would cut out the grooves that you didn't want to print on the paper, and that would leave the raised pattern, which was the end product that you would see. I have a selection of wood blocks I'm going to show you in the video today. 4 of them are racket ones, and the other 4 are advertising products. The racket blocks are very finely detailed because of the production method. You can see the strings and even finer detail, such as the name of the racket. There is text on them as well, which is such a small size that I needed a magnifying glass to see it. But when it's printed, you can actually see what it says. So typeface, when you are producing a page, all the letters and all the graphics are placed in a letterpress box. And in order for the paper to be printed properly, the tops of the printing part has to be exactly level over the whole page. If one of these blocks is lower down, then it won't print on the paper. And if one's higher up, then that will print, but possibly everything around it, because it's missed the paper, will have a blank area around it. So they have to be exactly the same height. Every single letter and every single graphic that is on the complete product, the printed page, has to be exactly level. And just to give you an example of this, you can see here that, if you can see here, the metal on this one is quite high, and the metal on this one is not. So this is a thinner metal that you can see here on the edge. And in order to compensate for the height, the actual wood, as you can see here, the wood on this one is lower down than on this one. And that was to compensate for the height of the metals. So if I put the wood flat, you'll see that the tops will be level. I'll just do that again, sorry. Right, so that the tops are level and the wood is not. The wood is higher up. It's kind of hard to see. But they've added more wood onto this to bring the thinner metal higher up so that it's level with all the other printing parts that are in it. And that has to be the case. So they would adjust one or the other based on the thickness of the metal that was produced. So it had to create a perfect flat surface for printing. Okay, so I'll put up some photographs of the ones that I'm talking about. So the first one is this one. You can't really see it too well, but it's just a racket. And on closer inspection, and you'll see it with the photograph that I'm putting up, this is an Alexander racket. It's called the Cressy. And Alexander were that company that produced rackets. They were from Tasmania. They had their own manufacturing company over in Tasmania. And this one on this, it says it's the Cressy, and it's the championship model. This is actually written on the shaft in this metal block. And this racket was from the 1930s. The next racket one I have is a Spalding racket, and this is for the Crow flight, so it's KRO flight. You won't be able to see any of the text on it, but this is made by Spalding and during the mid-20th century. And the Crow name, the KRO, was derived from Spalding's famous crow flight line, implying as the crow flies, straight and true. So that's like you're playing the ball when it's hit by this racket will fly straight and true to where you want it to go. So this one has Spalding on the shaft, down here on the shaft of the racket. Again, I'll put a picture up so you can see it more clear. And the name of the racket is on the throat, which is this part here, just on the bottom. And it also has Davis Cup written on it, and Davis Cup engraving of the actual Davis Cup is on this one as well. So quite a detailed little printing block, and they're not too large, as you can see. I have another Spalding one here, which is this one. And this is all that's written on the shaft, which is this here, is just Spalding Brothers. And on the throat here, just at the V shape, there is a graphic on here. And when I look at that under a microscope, it looks like an Olympic torch. So I believe that this one is for the Spalding Olympic racket, which is a racket that was produced during the mid-20th centuries. And it had a similar racket made by Schlesinger, which they also called the Olympic. And it was based on their design that they brought out one also called the Olympic at the same time. And then this one, this is a Schlesinger racket. It has a graphic on the throat, but it's hard to make out, so I can't really identify this one. Schlesinger is written down the shaft, and there is a graphic in at the throat. Can't really see it, but it looks like a knight. It looks like a figure. There is a racket called the Blue Knight by Schlesinger, but it's definitely not that graphic, so I'm not too sure what that one is, but it does look like a figure. So I'll put a picture up of that, and maybe if anyone can identify it, that will be very handy. So after those 4 little racket printing blocks, I've got this one here, which is an advert for Spalding tennis ball. So it shows a ball and text saying extra sets from every ball and synchron cover nylon reinforced text, which is so a Spalding synchron cover tennis ball refers to mid-1980s tennis balls that featured a specialized long-lasting synthetic or enhanced felt color technology. And so this was the little printing block that was used to put that in newspapers and magazines for advertising that. And then this one, which is a Dunlop Max Ply advert, and it shows just the throat of the racket, as you can see here, claiming it to be 10 times stronger than wood. So instead of solid timber, this racket was made by multiple layers of different woods, such as ash or beech and walnut, and they were glued and pressed together. And they were considered to be much, much stronger than a single piece of wood, having been bent with using steam. Racket manufacturing was made from a solid piece of wood, which was steam bent across a frame, and so that would give you the shape that came around the head and down the shaft of the racket. And because of the layers that this one was produced and glued together, considered to be 10 times stronger than wood. I have another Dunlop racket advert. This printing box about twice the size of the ones I've shown you previously. And this has the face of Frank Sedgman, and you can just see here. And that's superimposed on the racket. And then down here is the information about the racket itself. And in here on the throat of the racket is an even smaller headshot. So I think this would have been advertising what's called a photo decal racket, where the player that was sponsored by this racket company had their photograph on the racket, and you might have had a signature, a facsimile signature. So I'm not sure if you can see this too well in here, but it's a tiny, tiny little graphic just in here. And you might be able to see it better up here, I'm not sure. But I'll put a picture of it up there and let you have a look at it. But this is such a finely detailed advert that this has to have been produced by laser cutting. There's no way they would have done something that small. But it's a really nice advert. I'm trying to find some of these adverts in old magazines, but no luck so far. And so the last one I've got here is the one I showed you at the beginning, which is it's just a male player on the tennis court. There's no text on this. There's no advertising of any racket and such likes. So I believe this is just a printing block that would have been used as a filler space for a tennis advert. Company might have put in a full page advert and they've used this to put up in the top right hand corner or left corner or whatever, just as a generic tennis themed graphic. Okay, so that's the printing blocks that I have in the collection. They're not too hard to find printing blocks in general, but finding tennis themed ones is a little bit difficult. I have seen lots of printing blocks at markets and fairs, but I've not come across any more tennis ones. So I'm going to keep looking and add them to my collection as I find them. Okay, thanks for watching today's video. I'll catch you in the next one next week, and I'll have something of interest to show you again. So until then, keep well, look after yourselves, and I'll see you then. Bye.